If you click this video, it's probably because you want to learn how to use AI agents locally on your computer, maybe as privately as possible, maybe not. Either way, I'm going to talk about how you can use private AI agents locally on your computer and get the most power you need when you need it, and the most privacy and most economical, cheapest inference when you need it locally and remote. So basically in the first part of this video, we'll use an AI agentic workspace that helps us work on things with us, to automate tasks, to do research, to work in our calendar, for example. But then in the second part of this video, we're actually going to explore agents that we build with. So for example, this is my whole workspace for my brand and content creation and sub agents that write for me and how they do it, and they make websites and things like that. So there's two different types of agents that you might need to explore. And when we get more advanced, you're actually able to use either one for the same purposes. But I want to introduce you to very black and white styles in this video because I think it's a helpful way to approach agents and get started if you're getting started. And we are not going to explore OpenClaw or Hermes in this video because I believe that you really need to understand how AI agents work in the background before you try to make an OpenClaw or Hermes agent. You have to understand the infrastructure of these things to really take advantage of them. So in this video, I'm trying to show you these two versions so you can get a good idea and eventually move on to OpenClaw or Hermes if that's your goal. So we're getting right into it here. This is Odysseus. It's PewDiePie's thing that just came out. You've probably heard of it. It is a workspace. It can be a chatbot or an agent for you, depending on how you set it up. You have options to choose between different providers and models right here. I'll show you that in just a second. But as an intro to Odysseus, I really like this as a workspace. And if you're new to AI but want to learn about self-hosting your own AI agent frameworks or software, I do recommend you start with Odysseus because it is a very good introduction into understanding what agents do and why you use an agent, and being able to just mess around with different agent features. Okay, so before we even use Odysseus, let's actually install it. You are going to need Docker Desktop. Just go to docker.com, click download. You can find your operating system. And don't worry, you don't actually need to make an account. And then it'll look something like this on your computer. And what we'll do is install our agent framework into a container inside of Docker. And basically it just keeps it clean so your main computer doesn't get muddied up with new files and an AI perhaps going rogue. This is the Odysseus repo. You can see it has 60,000 stars. I always recommend making sure there's a lot of stars before you install some random GitHub repo. But PewDiePie has done a really good job on this, and I think it has a pretty good reputation attached to it. And if we just skip through all this stuff, we'll see the recommended way to run it is in Docker. And you would just copy all this in order to get started. You'd paste it into a terminal. So you'd search for the PowerShell or the terminal, PowerShell if you're on Windows, terminal if you're on Linux or Mac OS, and you just paste that and press enter, and it'll build it. Now, there's going to be one issue with that if you've never installed a local open source model, and you're going to see what that is in a minute. If you don't mind installing an AI agent that may or may not mess up things on your computer, like if you don't have sensitive data, if you don't worry about an AI going rogue on your machine, then I recommend installing it the native way. And copying and pasting this into your terminal will do the same thing. This is what you do for Apple Silicon. This is what you do for Windows, okay? But for purpose of this demonstration, I'm running it in a Docker container. So what is Odysseus Agent and why am I recommending it? If we start here at the setup, we're going to be able to add our models. This is a provider. A provider of models is the foundation of using any AI agent. So you can see right here, I actually have these models that I actually just deleted. I'll remove those so we can add a new one together. And I've got one remote API model, and that is Venice. Venice is a privacy-focused, uncensored options, all-in-one kind of aggregator of models. I'm a big fan. I also work with Venice, full transparency, but that's not the point. The point here is that Odysseus lets us use any AI inference we want. But if we want to be private, we don't want to be using DeepSeek or OpenAI etc., Anthropic, Gemini, because they're storing all your data. That is their business model. It is data. And I personally don't like all my stuff being logged and trained on later. So I want to either use a private provider like Venice or something completely local. So we're going to use Venice in the second agent example later. In this example, we're going to run Odysseus with Gemma 4. So Gemma 4 is a really powerful open source model by Google. And literally just this last week, Gemma 4 12B came out. And like, you can run it, you just need a few gigs of RAM. And it does like a pretty good job. Like, no joke, this model here with this quantization, it only needs like 7.4 gigabytes. And they're saying it does reasoning as well as some of these models of that you need like 30 gigabytes to use. So just in general, the Gemma 4 family is just really powerful to run locally. You can get away with maybe 8 gigs of RAM on your computer, and you might be able to get away with Gemma 4. So that's what we're focusing on in this video for local inference, but that's only local inference. So we have our local inference installed, and as you'll see, I've got my other API provider here. I'm going to show you Venice. You could also use something like OpenRouter, but it doesn't respect your privacy. So the big thing about Venice is that it respects your privacy whenever possible. So for example, if I click Agentic here on their settings and model page, which you can access once you're logged in, then I can see all these models that are good for agentic purposes are either anonymized or private, which means if it's private, Venice has a zero data retention agreement with the provider, or that's going through GPU stacks that Venice might actually own. I don't know, but they have contractual agreements that these are private, no data is stored, none of your prompts, nothing. If it's anonymized, this means that Venice is almost like a VPN in a way, because all of your prompts are going through Venice to get to the provider. So unless you say, my name is Jordan in your prompt, it's not going to know your name is, well, Jordan, if your name is Jordan. So leave out personal identifying information and it won't know. That said, as we're going to get into in this video, I like Venice because I can use something like Claude Opus 4.8, which is a beast and probably one of the best models there is right now. Or I could use Codex, GPT 5.5, etc. to build things. When we're building our workflows, building our software, whatever it is, these frontier models do the best job. But when we want to execute the workflows and use the software, then these open source models that are private, ideally, are actually a lot cheaper as well. So this, for example, via Venice, Kimi K2.6 is $4.66 per million tokens output, whereas Opus 4.8 is $30. Okay, so it's a fraction of the cost. And as long as a competent model built the workflow, then a local or private model via an API like this will execute it just fine. So I say all this because here in Odysseus, I want to have both available to me. One, because later we're going to see the teacher model. If the local model doesn't do a good job, the teacher model is going to be called to create the procedural files the local model needs to do a good job. And just because we might want to have access to models that we can't run locally on our computer. So Gemma 4 is great with my 16 gigs of RAM or whatever it is. But what if I want to run a model that would require hundreds of gigs of RAM? Well, it's not going to happen locally, but it can happen with a service like Venice. And I can still stay private. I can choose between all these different models all through one API key. Okay. So that's my thesis here for why I use a local model like Gemma for most of the main stuff, and then access to the Venice API for when I need anything beyond that. And I still want to be able to be private, and or I still want to be able to use the big daddy teacher models for fixing things, for building the frontier models to build, the open source or local models to execute. So I hope that's clear. I'm going to repeat that a lot in this video. So in order to add that other endpoint, we come here to add models, and you either select the provider you're using, which we see OpenRouter. Maybe by the time you see this video, Venice will be on here, but for now it's not. So I have to choose custom URL. The base URL is api.venice.ai/API/v1. And then I need an API key, which I can get just by clicking new API key up here. I'll call it Odysseus. I click generate. It gives me the key. And then I just paste that right there. I click add, and there it's going to be. Okay. Very simple. I do not recommend doing this with a local endpoint. I haven't gotten it to work. So I always just go to the settings with Odysseus. I click cookbook here. And here in the cookbook, we see what will work on our computer. Now, I have Odysseus running in a Docker container. Because I'm running it in a Docker container, this actually doesn't see my real computer. It doesn't see that I'm actually on a Mac Silicon. It just sees, oh, you have this much RAM, which is all the RAM available to Docker. As you can see in Docker, I only allow it to have 7.5 gigabytes. So Odysseus here doesn't actually know the full machine. It doesn't think I have a GPU, nothing. But if you're running it natively, like we saw earlier, if you're running Odysseus native, then it actually will see your machine and it will know. Otherwise, you can simply go to Ollama. I recommend Ollama because it's the simplest. You can also try LM Studio or Llama CPP. I think Ollama just makes it the simplest. And so if we're looking for Gemma 4 here, you would just find the model that fits your computer. So if you have 16 gigs of RAM, for example, you can't run this one, but you can run this one. No problem. You can run this one, probably that one too, but I think 7 would be better. If you've got 32 gigs of RAM, you'd probably do pretty good on Gemma 4 31B. And you can do some research here and understanding what all these different tags are and the quantization and stuff. But point is, Odysseus makes it really easy to use local models. So first off, it'll help you download models. You just click a model and then click download or run, and then boom, you can run it. So you can download models here, especially if you're running natively. If you're running in a Docker container, we got to come back here to the settings. And here we need to scan for servers. And if it doesn't find Ollama, which it might not, we need to paste the endpoint URL. So to find that, I do a quick Google search here, and you just see if your Ollama is running on your main computer and you're using Odysseus or whatever it is from inside a Docker container, then that is going to be your IP address for Ollama. So I copy that and I paste that there and I click add. Now it thinks it's offline. Let's load it again here. So what I'll do is I'll press stop on the Odysseus container, and now we'll see it disappears, and I'll press play again. So now I've refreshed Odysseus. We've got a new chat here. Let's open up here. We see we have 3 out of 3 models enabled now. That was just from a restart. And if I click to manage the models, we see these are my local models. Gemma 4, Whisper for transcriptions, and Nomic Embed, which is for like embeddings, which I don't even use. But now I have these models here, okay? And I'm actually going to disable these because we don't need them. And then I'm also just going to disable the Venice API for now, because you can see there's 89 models there, and we're starting with just local models, so I don't want everything to get confusing. So here we are, and we see that we have one model available here. Let's use this chatbot feature. Tell me about Newton's law of gravity. We'll start here with the basic chatbot and see how this is all just local on our computer now, and then we'll go into more agentic stuff here. There we go. So we can see Odysseus formats stuff, creates tables for us, puts things into color, and gives us a long, drawn-out answer here. Great. So let's say we want to actually pretend our agent is Newton, right? I can go here to prompt injection, and I can either inject a prompt and change some of the settings about how the model works, which I'm not going to go into in this video. You generally want to stay pretty balanced here. Or I can create a character and give it like a system prompt, basically. So here we have like Socrates, Nietzsche, like let's choose Socrates here, and we can see that it has a system prompt now. I click start character. I can say, tell me about Newton. And now it's going to respond like Socrates. It's going to respond with whatever is in its prompt here. So say, for example, I want to create a social media manager, or if you're a marketer, for example, you manage social media posts. I click expand, and it'll use that local AI to just make that a better system prompt for us. Okay, there it is. And then we save and start character, and now we have an assistant. And meanwhile, Socrates answered me back as Socrates. One other thing we'll do in chat mode, which is neat, let's make a group. So here I can say I want the group to respond in parallel succession instead of sequentially, and I can add participants. So there's my social media manager, and we'll give it Gemma 4. Then we can have Socrates in there, and then we can have Nietzsche in there. And really, I don't have all my models here because I'm running just locally, but if I were to enable my API provider, Venice, then there'd be a lot more models in there, and I could actually give each personality a different model. And then we could have a whole conversation. Tell me the meaning of life. And then the social media manager and Socrates and Nietzsche will respond. I think this is a cool tool that I haven't really seen anywhere else, to be able to just have a little group chat through your agent framework. It's pretty neat. So here we get a snide response from Nietzsche. We get another philosophical response from Socrates. And then the social media manager. From an engagement and community building perspective, the meaning of life isn't a singular destination. So I'm showing you that because if you're watching my channel, you're probably a builder of some sort, and you could essentially make a team. So make a team with all the roles on your team, and you can have a group chat with it. I think that's pretty neat. Along the same lines, you can compare models, which means you can test. I only have one model going right now, but you could test different models. Actually, so let's just enable the other provider here, just so you have an idea. And now we have API.Venice. Okay. We click compare, and we can now compare different models. So GLM5, Quen 3.5, Claude Opus, and then of course we could find our local one as well. And then we can give it all a task, either a chat task or let's do an agentic task. Oh, we gotta do all that again. So let's do Gemini, and we click start. And what's neat now is you can just give it an evaluation prompt. So let's just say, script and run. Write a Python script that generates a bar chart of the 5 most common programming languages. Save it as chart.png and then run it. So we can shoot that off. And this is a blind test, so it's not going to show us the model. It looks like we had some failures, probably an API failure. Yeah. Or maybe the model didn't exist. But these two are running. And then at the end, we can vote on what was the best one. And then it actually will give us a scoreboard. And we can just keep in mind. So if we are, for example, making a social media manager, we could test out its prompts and its tasks with 4 different models to see which one we like the most. And then based on that, we can choose the model we want. I think this is really important to figure out which models work best for you, because I don't think the model thing with Claude Code and Codex is going to last forever. The subscription model where you just get subsidized tokens, basically, you get so much more value than you're paying for. I don't think that is reality, and I think it's important to start approaching your token usage as it really costs, to be honest. So we can see this. The script has been created and executed successfully. I don't see the script here, but that's also because I don't think we can see images inside of Odysseus yet. And then that's saved too. So this was not the best sample prompt, but whatever. Let's say this one was the best. And look, Claude Sonnet 4.5 was the winner. Now, I don't know why these failed. That is kind of interesting. But now you get it. So you can see the scoreboard here. Okay, Claude Sonnet is 1 for 0. And then it'll show you the price, and then you can just keep on comparing models for your tasks. So that's cool. But what about tasks? Well, you can actually add tasks. So you can have your agent check your email, and you say, okay, email auto reply. And if we edit this, we could say the action is called draft email replies, pre-draft AI reply suggestions for new inbox emails. We can set it on a schedule, do this every 2 hours, for example, or we can set it for like when I get a new email, do a reply, or when a webhook is triggered. So if someone signs a form on my website or something like that. So you can set up everything here, similar to like Agent Zero, and it can just be a simple action or it can be a prompt. So like when this happens, like the schedule, the event, or the webhook, then do this. When I send a new image, make a social media post, right? This is going to be for our social media manager, right? And then we can choose the model that's going to use for it. We can choose where the output goes. Does it go to the chat? Is it in a notification in the browser? Or is it going to email me, right? And then you can chain this to other tasks as well, so they can like go in order. So then you can see the activity of your tasks. You can make new tasks. Now we're talking about email here, and there's calendar, there's documents, there's all kinds of tasks. These are just the default tasks. You can add your own. But what makes this really powerful inside Odysseus is your integration. So I'm back here in the settings, and this is a blank workspace. I'm not ready to show the workspace I'm actually building, but I can add my email, like my Gmail here. Just choose Gmail, and then I just make my app password, pop it in, and then I can connect this straight to my Gmail to receive emails, to have the AI read emails, to respond to emails. I can add a calendar. I can add any MCP tool, right? This is really convenient as well. So then our agent can access any MCP. or any API service. Any API service we wanted to have access to, we just add it as an integration. So this is what gives Odysseus its power as a local AI agent. This is all running locally on my computer. I have the option to run all these models from Venice right now, or I could just simply run a completely local model, which it looks like we got another issue there. Let's see. Just disable everything. There's always a few growing pains with these kinds of things. And then let's just refresh it. Sometimes you need a new chat. And yeah, we're back. Okay, cool. And so then, yeah, you got your calendar here. Your agent can access the calendar. You can sync or import a calendar, follow a calendar. And then you have notes. You have to-do lists. You can even draw things as a note. I kind of feel like there's no stone left unturned. Like if PewDiePie really did make this and design it, like he's been really thinking hard about this. And that's why I'm really impressed with it. There's deep research, and all of this deep research that it does for you, you can not only like really refine the settings that you want, but it will save it into your documents. So here in your library, you actually have documents and research and chats, and I guess an archive of things we don't want anymore. But here in the research, every time you do a deep research project, it'll add it here, and then you can view them. You can actually allow your agent to access them. And so in the same vein, I have a little bit of a knowledge base for the AI Captains Academy here, some markdown files that explain the true north values of the Academy, the brand design system, how we design things, the brand guide. And that said, if you want to be part of a community where we do AI stuff and we talk about it, and we have 2 calls a week where you can ask questions, then check out the AI Captains Academy. There's a link below. It's a nice community. So yeah, that's the library. And then we have our chats here as well. And to close things off, I'm going to do this last because the brain here is the foundations of AI agents. Okay. And we're going to get deep into these brain things at the end of this video. But for now, I'll just tease you. You can add memories here. So you can say, never use it's not X, it's Y sentence style formation, right? Actually, where's that? Oh, I got to add it. So I add that, right? So now it remembers, never say it's not X, it's Y, right? Don't be AI slop. You can add skills. So I don't have any skills in here currently, but you can just click add. You can make one. So hey, when we talk about making a social media post, this is how you do it. And we'll get into that later as well. You can also import them just straight through the chat. You just attach a file. So here, for example, is a skill that follows my writing voice, more or less, for AI Captain's content. So I'll just attach this, say install this skill. And our local open source model installed it successfully. And now it's a definitive reference for all AI Captain's Academy content. Now if we go here to the brain, skills. Oh, that didn't work. It's not here. You know why? Because I was in chat mode, not agent mode. So I'll say install this skill to Odysseus brain. You can also see we have the social media persona on. Let's shut that off. There we go. And now, with any luck, it will install the skill to our brain. And I will just say outright, if this doesn't work right now, it's because it's an open source. Oh, it looks like now it is talking like someone. What's going on there? Oh, it's talking like me. It's actually using the brand standard. And, so yeah, it didn't work, and I'm not surprised because these open source models, you're not going to get it every time. So there's 2 options now. And number 1 is to just make a skill manually. So I would say Jordan Herb's writing voice, when to use, when making social media content. The how is going to be blah, blah, blah. I can't find the file right now. I don't feel like copying and pasting because there's another way. And that way is to now activate the more powerful model. So earlier I mentioned, and I will mention again, build with the frontier models and execute with the local or open source models to save money and maximize your privacy. When you're building a tool, it's okay if OpenAI, Anthropic, whoever knows you're building it. I mean, unless you're doing something illegal, in which case maybe it's not okay for you, but I am not advocating anyone do that. When you're building a tool for your job or your business or whatever, just use a really good model. So like Opus 4.8 is going to cost me something, but I know it's not going to mess up. So use Claude Opus. I attach files. there's that standard. Install this skill to the brain. It doesn't need to search, but it might need the terminal here. So I'm going to actually give it access to the shell. So there we go. And it's in the brain. Once again, building with frontier models will get the job done. And then we execute with our private, more economical, perhaps even local models. So here in the brain now, skills. 2 skills. It even made a skill. Teacher created. Let's get into that in just a second. But here it is, the voice standard for Jordan Herbs. There's the skill. Test. And it's testing it out. It's got an 80% confidence rate. A skill is a workflow, basically. So your AI agent knows when it's time to make a social media post, follow this workflow. All right, so I can close this. It keeps going. Now, let's check out this other skill, install skill from Markdown. So this is using our teacher model, Claude Opus 4.8. What is a teacher model? This is really cool. If we come here to the AI defaults in the settings, we'll see that our default chat model is set to use Ollama, our local endpoint, instead of api.venice.ai, which is our remote endpoint. And we've only got one model, so that's Gemma, right? If I want, I add the fallback, which is Venice, and we can choose another model. I could actually just keep it at Gemma because Venice does offer Gemma uncensored. We use Gemma for uncensored. Then as a utility model, we generally want to use a local endpoint to save money. These are very basic tasks that don't require high intelligence. And then we have a vision model for analyzing images. Gemma 4 can do that. And our research model for the deep research we talked about earlier, I would personally use something powerful for this. I don't really need a lot of privacy. To save a little money, instead of using Opus, maybe use Sonnet. Or if you don't care about the money, just use Opus or GPT 5.5, for example. But down here, this is what's really interesting about Odysseus, and I think kind of where AI agents are heading. Teacher model. So when a self-hosted student fails an agentic mode task, escalate to a state-of-the-art teacher that writes a skill. And this happened already without me even trying. API.venice.ai is our endpoint. Instead of our local endpoint, it's Venice. And it's using the Big Daddy, Opus 4.8. Which means if our local model doesn't do it well and it can't do it and it fails, then the Big Daddy teacher model will come and generate the procedural skill. So next time, the local, more economical model will do a good job. So this is another good example. Even the AI agent frameworks, build with frontier, execute with local and open source. So that is what happened here. In our brain, we see that this was auto-created, install skill from Markdown file. Now, I thought this was already built into Odysseus, but I was wrong. So let's publish that. And now we have that. And now you can also see we had run a test on this. I don't know what happened to it, but it actually upped the confidence level to 95%. And then what will happen a lot of the time is, based on memories, this is my understanding of it so far. Based on memories, it will draft skills, and Hermes agent does this too. It'll draft skills based on what you're doing and then put them in here. And then Odysseus will create a confidence level to be like, hey, this is a good skill. I'm pretty confident this is right. And then you can audit them as well. So that's a bit on the brain. And that's a bit on Odysseus, okay? So you could use this as your workspace. We have a social media post to create today. We activate our social media manager. Maybe we attach something or we add a document here, whatever that might be. And then we have a workspace here, okay? Local, open source, really designed for your AI sovereignty. So this was an introduction to Odysseus, which I think is a great project if you need an AI workspace that does a lot of stuff. You still have to have an understanding of how agents work, but fortunately we went through a bit of that here, and with enough trial and error, you will figure it out. Next up, we're going to explore OpenCode. Now, OpenCode is a different type of agent. OpenCode exists in the command line and will do stuff for you inside of whatever folder you're in on your computer. We will explore OpenCode in 2 different ways. We'll introduce it just here in a terminal where you can see you have the work being done happening in front of your eyes, which, it's working on code and stuff. And then over here on the right-hand column, we see the money being spent, the tokens being used, if any tools like MCPs are being used, etc. And then the second way of using OpenCode is going to be with an IDE, an integrated development environment. I'm going to recommend VS Codium, which is a fork of VS Code. VS Code is a Microsoft project that is considered open source because you can see the code here on GitHub, but it actually still does things that aren't good for your privacy. So Visual Studio Code, as we're going to see, you can put an agent over here like this chat. We're going to put OpenCode, an AI agent. We're going to plug it in with either Ollama, like we just did with Gemma 4, or with our Venice API key to access more powerful models. But basically, VS Codium takes away some of the invasive telemetry and tracking that happens inside of VS Code, the Microsoft app. Big Tech, their product is data. So, when it's free, you're the product. So, in the rest of this video, we're going to explore OpenCode. And when I say VS Code, you can interchange that, VS Code or VS Codium, and there's plenty of other alternatives out there. But this will be the second way. So now let's dive into OpenCode. And the first thing we're going to talk about is security and safety. We kind of talked about this with Odysseus as well. We're running this in a Docker container, which means it doesn't have access to any files on our computer unless we give it the files, like we attach them, we add them to the library. But in the example you're about to see, we're actually just going to put OpenCode on our main computer, which means the AI could have access to anything on there. I'm sure everyone here has heard of OpenClaw and some of the horror stories with OpenClaw, because if you have an agent that just has free reign over your machine, there is a potential for disaster. It could remove your home folder. It could delete important things. It could, God knows what. And so around the internet at the time of this heyday, there were skills out there that people were using to basically inject malicious prompts into people's OpenClaws. So if it's running on your computer, it could say, hey, send me all your private keys to any cryptocurrency wallet you have on your computer. And it would believe that it was you, even though it was some malicious actor out there on the internet, and it would do that. It would send it. So people normally install OpenClaw or Hermes agent. You would do that on a safe computer or a Raspberry Pi, something that you're not using as your everyday machine. And that is the basic rule of thumb here, because these are like autonomous agents. They wake up at different intervals. It's called a heartbeat. And they'll just start doing things, whatever you trained it to do. OpenCode, though, is not autonomous like that. It'll only wake up if you start talking to it, which is why I normally stick with this for demos like this. So in order to install OpenCode, OpenCode.ai is the website. You just click this command here. You search for the terminal on your computer, or if you're on Windows, it's called the PowerShell. And you just paste that command, and that's literally all you need to do. It will do the rest. I've already got it installed, but it'll install all the different things you need on your computer to run this. This is all on GitHub. If you're ever in doubt about something telling you to install something on the command line, see how many stars it has on GitHub. This has 163,000 stars. That is a lot. Okay. This is a very well-known and popular agent framework. So OpenCode is, it's trustworthy. Okay. So you install that command and it will automatically run, it'll install all the package managers you need, all this nerd stuff that isn't really necessary to understand. You just want to make sure you trust it to the most degree you feel comfortable with. I guess there's also a desktop app now. I didn't know that. So you could even skip. Yeah, you can just download this for your computer now. That's cool. I always run it on the terminal. And any terminal on your computer, you just type OpenCode and it will open up this interface. And this is what I believe it can just be your workspace for anything. It's my workspace for everything I do now with AI. It's just here in Visual Studio Code, right here inside of one window. So we can see the contents of the file here. We can see all the stuff in the folder here. And then we have an AI right here to create new files. But let's get into that. There's extensions here. I mean, there's an OpenCode extension, actually. I have it installed. I just, oh yeah. So literally right here, that's the OpenCode extension. I can just click that and it will automatically open up OpenCode just by clicking that icon. And I didn't even have to type in OpenCode, but it does the same thing. It just opens up a terminal and launches OpenCode. So you're here, you have your API credits, and now you generate an API key. So if I call this demo, I'm not going to generate it here because I don't want to, show the code here. The API key, but you do that, you click generate, and then when you're installing OpenCode, you run this command connect, and you find a provider. And here in the providers, you'll see Venice AI. I'll just search for it. Venice, there it is. and you would paste in your API key just like that. You paste in your API key and boom, now your agent framework has a provider, Venice. And then after you have all that set up, you find a model. So what models does Venice have? Well, the whole list is right here. Okay. Everything we saw earlier in the interface, these are all right here that we can now use locally on our computer. Another way to navigate this is right here on the API settings page. We have all the models and we can sort them through text, agentic, image, video, audio. So you can generate music, you can generate speech, all of this through the API. So with an agentic model, which is what we want right now, we say, okay, I want to make sure it can call tools, which is function calling. It can think with reasoning. Let's say we want it to be good at code and it needs to have vision so it can see things. Now we have all the good agentic models available to us provided through Venice. And if we open it up, we can see the cost. So Kimi K2.6 per million tokens that you give it, it's going to be 85 cents. But per million tokens that it gives you, it's $4.66. Compare that to GPT 5.3 codex, for example, $2.19 in, $70.50 out. Opus, $30 out, $6 in. So these open source models are extremely more economical than the frontier proprietary models. And like I mentioned earlier, they are getting to the point where they're almost just as good. And by the end of this year, I have no doubt that they will be just as good for this kinds of things. You've probably heard of the Claude mythos that they released privately to big tech and like governments. They don't even want to give that to the plebs because it's so powerful. That might be on another level, but for now, for all the models we have that can do agentic things, you're going to get really, really, really top of the line results with Claude Opus, but you're going to pay for it. You're going to get really good results with Kimi K2.6 and you're going to save a lot of money. So one thing I like to say, like build with a frontier model and execute with an open source model. So if we were to try to build a workflow here inside of our integrated development environment, which is all it is just a place to have files on your computer. So say I have this demo folder here in my Finder. You can see I have this demo folder right here, intro.txt. This is the same thing. What you see in the IDE in Visual Studio Code is the same here in this folder. Create a landing page for a demo product called Jordan AI. Make it up. Now watch this. Inside of this folder, we're going to see new files show up. And once again, we're using Kimi K2.6 with Venice. All the software you see is open source. I mean, even the model we see is open source. So everything right now is open source, and it's going to make me a landing page right now. And case in point, here's where I can get an image. If I were to save a picture of me here, I'll drag that into this folder. Okay. Picture of me. After it makes the web page, I'll have it add the picture of me and it'll know where it is and how to find it because there it is. It's here in the folder. So anything in this folder, the AI agent is immediately aware of. Okay. And we're not going to get super advanced today. I don't think we'll talk about the context engineering or context hygiene, but where this goes is you have rules. So I have a content repurposing pipeline basically where there's a file called CLAUDE.md, cause this was made by, Anthropic, the original idea of it. And this is just a behavioral file. How to act. When I give you a subtitles file, you process it and create, 10 X posts, 1 X thread, 1 LinkedIn post, blah, 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 and 2 images to go along with them. And so this is really basic, but a CLAUDE.md file for any agent is a behavioral file. So this agent over here will automatically read that and be like, oh, Jordan told me to do this. Jordan gave me this. Here's what I need to do now based on what that says. So when you use ChatGPT, when you use Claude, more or less, unless you have like a project, and even then, you have to tell it like about you. Like, hey, I'm working on this. Here's like the backstory. And here's what I want to create. Here's this. So when you're trying to do like long-term projects or bigger projects, it doesn't have context. When you have a workspace like this with the right context engineering, like these behavioral files with a knowledge base, with skills, then it has all the context for the things you want to do and the things you do frequently. And so this is really important. It's a bit more advanced. Sorry, I don't want to overwhelm everyone. What I think is just really cool to hammer home here is that here in this workspace, you can just have a total creative partner that can do so much for you, almost anything. I mean, I use one of these for video editing now. I'll give it clips and it'll literally edit videos for me, like just here in this interface. So everything is just going to natural language processing. The interfacing with technology is just becoming chat. Eventually it'll just be like think, and it does. Hopefully not in my lifetime. But here now, all I gotta say is this is what I want. This is your context for what it should be like and how you should do it, and then it does it. So it made the main file. We'll just say add my headshot to the page now. And let's see. I didn't tell it where it was, but look, it's searching now for image files. It found it. It's thinking. And if we open this in my Finder, in my browser, meet Jordan AI, your intelligent workflow partner. All right. And so there it goes. Now, this had no context, right? This was a joke. But in my actual work, in my workspaces, it knows everything about my brand, everything about my product, everything about my goals, even everything I'm doing, my color schemes, images to use, logos, whatever. And so if I were to say that without telling it anything else, it would make exactly what I wanted. On brand. So for example, while that's rolling, the AI Captains Academy, which is where I teach this stuff, these websites, and I have different variants for different demographics, these were all made in the same way. All the copy, all of the case study stuff going on, everything in here was all made because it knew all the colors, it had all the images, it knew the modules in my course, and it slapped it all together. Now, that doesn't mean I shipped that. You always want to have a human in the loop. Like, AI is great for doing the first draft, maybe even the first 2 drafts. Then you want to go in and give it life. Make sure you approve of it. I don't advocate for posting AI slop. But that said, with good context and with the right rules, you actually can create very good AI generated content. Oh gosh, it did that kind of wrong. And so now we just say, the image is too big. It doesn't fit. Fix it. And then you just use natural language until we have the website. Now, to my point earlier, we're using an open source model. Maybe it's not doing as great of a job as using a frontier model would. And we could actually compare and contrast these. We could switch over to Sonnet or Opus or GPT 5.5 or whatever and see if it does a better job. So yeah, let's see if it fixed that. There I am. All right. Down there. But yeah, so that's how you would launch it. And there's, Rue code, I think, was just deprecated. This was a really good one as well. Same thing. You just add in your Venice API key and it will work for you. But OpenCode, I just feel is like a good starting point for kind of understanding how this stuff works. So what's really important, that context hygiene and sub-agent architecture is what I do is I build it with my Claude Code subscription. I build these tools with the best models. And even if it's not with the subscription, I'll pay the API credits through Venice or whatever. Build it with these frontier models and then harden them so even the dumbest of the best open source models can still execute them. Which means, once again, they're getting a lot better, but a few months ago it meant you have to use all capital letters and repeat things. Don't do this, don't do this. And then a few paragraphs later, remember, don't do this. Whereas Opus and Sonnet will just remember it. You say it once, but these open source models would need you to say it multiple times. It's getting better, but you just need to guide them more and more and more. So you would build your workflow, build your app even, build whatever it is, do the building with the best models available to you, assuming you can afford it, and make sure then when you actually use the thing you built that it executes cleanly with the open source model. So it's more economical and you don't got to worry about the rug pull. Exactly. I think that is the smartest strategy going into the future. I don't know what the rug pull looks like. That's just my theory, but it doesn't add up, and it can't add up I mean, $200 a month for a Claude Code subscription. The amount of Opus 4.7 I'm able to use is insane for only $200 a month. Like, it is not, it cannot be sustainable for Anthropic. And they're giving a lot of people that, those subscriptions. So yeah, it's important to not become 100% dependent on these frontier models. They're really good. I don't want to take anything away from them, but we don't want to be super dependent on them for many reasons. It's not just the privacy and the sycophancy and the psychology that we talked about earlier, but also just about, what happens if the price goes up? What happens if government regulations don't allow you to use OpenAI models anymore, right? Or Anthropic models. Anthropic rolled out KYC a while back, right? For certain users, and people were kind of up in arms about that. I mean, we know that's coming. Okay, so this is Cursor, which is like Visual Studio Code, but it's not open source. And what this workspace is a whole lot of code, but also AI workspace stuff, which we'll get to, for creating long form videos without having to do anything. Okay, I'll show you this real quick. I did not do any editing to this. This whole thing was made just talking to this workspace.
Here on a quiet drive in suburban Bellevue, in the soft, permanent drizzle of the American Pacific Northwest, we observe one of the great migrations of our time. The founder has, at last, decided to leave. He has lived here for 28 years. He started his first company in a Tacoma bedroom. He has, until this morning, been a registered Democrat. And now, at last, he is reading his new state tax bill. Notice the trance-like calm of the departing founder. There is no anger. He has done the math. He has done the math several times.
Music, sound effects, everything you hear.
Meanwhile, deep within the legislator's natural habitat, the wood-paneled Olympia Capitol, the predator is announcing her newest accomplishment. She calls it an investment. The act, she explains, asks only that the wealthiest pay their fair share. The exemptions list runs 42 pages. Newspapers are exempt. Television is exempt. Radio is exempt. The pollsters are exempt. The list goes on. The page does not stop turning. 3,000 miles south, the founder has arrived in his new habitat. He has saved 9.9% of his realized gains. His new neighbor is a barbecue pit. He has been, by all accounts, quietly devastated to discover that he is happy. The legislator does not turn. She does not need to. She has been told by her chief of staff, by the latest projections, by the founder now in Miami, that the wealthiest still pay their fair share. She believes this completely, and belief here is the most renewable resource in the state. And so gently, year by year, the Pacific Northwest empties itself of the very species it was built upon. The legislator endures. The drizzle endures. The exemptions list endures. Tune in next week when the legislator will discover, with great surprise, that the budget shortfall is somebody...
So the script was written by AI. It did the research on its own. It made a storyboard. It made sure the character was consistent in every different shot. It made the music. It made the David Attenborough narrator, and then it stitched it all together. And then it gave me a first draft, and I said, okay, fix this, and then to fix this. Okay, all of this takes place in this environment here. So what does it look like? Well, we have the agent over here, just like the OpenCode thing over here we showed you earlier. And then you have the CLAUDE.md. Okay. This workspace is an agentic first Venice optimized harness for consistency first video creation at any length and format. So right away, when the agent is opened in this workflow, in this workspace, it says, okay, this is what you're doing here. This is how it works. This is the code you use. These are the endpoints. These are the video generation models. Everything it needs to know about what could possibly happen in the scope of its job here, which is to generate videos. Then in this .claude folder, we have the subagents. So we have an art director. So in the phase of the video production where it's figuring everything out, it spawns a new subagent, the art director agent, in its own context window. So this is the key point of subagents is I didn't cover token limits today. But basically, in a normal conversation with an AI, you have either like 200,000 tokens or 1 million tokens these days available in your conversation. And the more tokens you use, gradually the worse quality your output gets. This is why it's really important to have efficient context. So right out the gate, it knows what it's doing, so it doesn't waste any tokens. And not only that, it gets more expensive the more tokens you use as well. So there's various reasons why you want to have good context engineering, good context hygiene. So when it's got multiple jobs to do, the main agent acts as an orchestrator. So the orchestrator agent, which is what we see over here, the main agent is basically saying, okay, reading that CLAUDE.md file and going, okay, the first thing we need to do is figure out the aesthetics before we make the storyboard. So then this agent over here will, in the background, spawn a sub-agent with this as the system prompt. Like, hey, you're the art director agent. Here's everything you need to know. We have presets for the aesthetics. Here's the workflow. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to read the screenplay. You're going to recommend an aesthetic profile. And then they show it to me and I say yes or no. Do I like it? And then, okay, next step. So then the storyboard assembler is going to come in. So instead of all the work that the storyboarder does, the art director, all these sub-agents, like it's a big job. It could use hundreds of thousands of tokens to do that job. So instead of that being loaded into the main orchestrator agents window here, it's being delegated into a new, fresh conversation, and then just the results are sent back. So instead of 200,000 tokens being sent back to our orchestrator agent, only maybe like 5,000 is sent back. And so it saves an incredible amount of tokens, which means your the quality of your output is going to remain higher for longer. So every single sub-agent now is sent to a new conversation for every different job. And so this is an important part of context hygiene for multi-step workflows in an environment like this. Because if one agent is doing it all, then it's just going to be trash. Even 1 million tokens is just going to be trash. And most models are only like 200,000. It's like way more expensive to do 1 million tokens anyway. So good sub-agent architecture is where you have all these different sub-agents that really know how to do their job precisely. And then a good Claude.md behavioral file that tells the orchestrator agent, hey, here's what you're doing step by step. And make sure you call this sub-agent for this, and this sub-agent for this, and this sub-agent for this. Not only that, there's certain workflows it's going to do. So here's the subtitles workflow. This is a skill. A skill file is everything, like how to do everything in this aspect of the workflow. So in this case, here's how to burn in the subtitles. Here's everything that needs to be done by the agent. But this is a big file. It's 285 lines. Once again, that could be tens of thousands of tokens. All that's read at the beginning is this, which is just maybe a few hundred tokens. So a few hundred tokens is consumed by just seeing, hey, these skills are available. So then with the behavioral file and the sub-agents, then it knows, oh, hey, we need to do subtitles right now. I better read the whole file now because I know we have the skill and this is what it does because we loaded that at the beginning, but I don't know how to do it. This skill file shows me how to do it. So you have all the skills, you have the sub-agents, and then you have commands, which are basically like hooks. So you could do command add character, and then it would just follow this exact workflow, these instructions for a command. So all of these in a context hygiene setting, it's what creates a harness. This is an agentic harness, and this is the future of software, guys, because you can do this on your own. And instead of paying a platform $20 a month or whatever, so you can make videos, blah, blah, blah. And you're still paying for the API credits of the videos here. But literally any workflow you can think of, you can build here in this environment, right here in an IDE with open source software, using Venice essentially for with one API key. You can do anything. Like it took me forever to realize I could edit video with AI. And I realized that's all the software is anyway, right? It's just code, right? And then I'm just moving the video files around and then it saves it. Like there's just code. And if it's code, the AI can do it. So literally anything you can think of now, these AIs can create it for you. And as you learn to create a harness like this, then you can create a harness for anything you want. And it happens all on your computer. And you don't have to know how it works, hardly. You have to have an idea, like everything we just talked about with the agents, the skills, the Claude.md. You want to know how that stuff works. But you don't need to know all the code. Like there's so much code in here that this thing is using to do everything, like all that? I don't know. Don't ask me. I have no idea. But it knows, and that's what's important. So it gets the job done. But the point is where it used to require, years and years of training so you could code something and then you put it online and hope you get subscribers. Now any individual can just make their own workflow software on their computer. This is all open source. I have this on GitHub. You could download this today and start making your own videos. All you got to do is pay the Venice API credits. Code is a commodity now. It's like there's no more bottleneck of creating the software. In fact, it's like you're kind of an asshole if you don't put this stuff on GitHub now. It's like, why would I keep this proprietary for me? No, now this is for everyone. And the whole way we approach and perceive value now in digital economies is completely shifting because we don't need your product anymore. Services, perhaps, human to human services especially, but all these subscription services, like you could literally find a subscription service, probably 95% of subscription services, screenshot it, drag it in here and say, build me this. And it will just build it for you. Save yourself $50 a month or whatever it is. No, it's really insane. And I think, most of the challenge here is comprehending this change, is the mindset shift. Like I said, it took me a year to realize, AI can edit video for me. What? Now I have a long YouTube video and I give it the subtitle file and it will chop it up for a thread and add subtitles to it. And I don't even have to do anything. It used to take hours, chop it up, add the subtitles, even if that was automatic, and then export them. Now it just does it. Easy. So the possibilities are truly endless. And once again, to go back to what we were saying earlier, start with a goal. What do you want to achieve here? What's the outcome you want? What is this task you want to automate? And just work towards that and try to do it in different ways. Eventually you will get there. And as you get there, you will learn. That's what's important, is learning, because as you learn the different ways of doing things for a certain goal, then when these other objectives come around, you're like, I know exactly how I would go about doing that. And then along with the AI, you just say, hey, here's what I want to build. Here's how I think it should be built. What do you think? And then it'll tell you, why you're wrong maybe and a better way to build it, or it'll be like, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do it. So these models are less, agreeable when you're building things, which I've noticed. They're very smart. Half the time I don't even know what they're telling me. How should we do this? And I just ask, what does that mean? And then they explain it to me. Here's what that means. And then I'll make a decision. So yeah. Okay. So thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful, at least as a intro guidance to how all this stuff works. If this is really important to you and you liked the way I laid things out today, I invite you to join the AI Captains Academy. There's a link below. We are a community and it's just a bunch of AI builders. Come bring your questions to our 2 weekly face-to-face community calls. And there's also a full curriculum to understand the foundations of all this stuff. So even when the new tool comes out and things change, you can still have an idea of how it all works, because that's what's important, is how this stuff works, because then it doesn't matter what happens next in the industry, more powerful models, new tools that do the same things. You want to understand the knowledge infrastructure, fundamentals, context engineering, things like that. That's what we do inside the AI Captains Academy. So thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button if you're into AI tutorials, and I'll see you in another video.